Hello, this is the Conquering Hill podcast. My name is Nicholas Gagne, and today I have a very special guest. His name is Dan Manuel. Well, I first reached out to Di a long time ago, trying to get him on the show. Um, I know he's passionate about fitness and really, living the best life you can. Um, so first, I just want to introduce you. I mean, you're an author. Tell me about your book.
Well, first of all, thanks, Nicholas. It's great that we're finally connected. I know it's been a long time coming, and a
Mm.
lot on my side because I've just things have been pretty full. As a life is full for you as well, so it's just neat that the stars aligned, and here we are. Yeah, as far as the book's concerned, I wrote a book about 8 years ago called the Whole Life Fitness Manifesto, and it teaches people how to really maximize 2% of every 24 hours. And if people
Mm.
are like, okay, I'm trying to do the math and it's too early to do it, don't worry. 2% of every 24 hours is 30 minutes. All right. So I sort of call it the 2% solution. And it's just a really simplistic program or methodology to prioritize self-care in a way that it creates the greatest amount of impact for your physical body, your mental body, as well as your spiritual body. And that's why it's called the Whole Life Fitness Manifesto. And so yeah, it's great. It's a 28-day phase, and you just wash, rinse, repeat. I tell people go 28 days and then take 7 days off, then do another 28, and it's just really a lifestyle piece. Think about it like flossing your teeth. This is a basic way to invest 2% every day to prioritize you and your own self-care. And people always say, well, geez, only 30 minutes. I'm like, yeah, it's the least you should have for yourself at the very least,
The very
30
least.
minutes a day. And people always like, I don't have that time. I'm like, give me your smartphone. And people may not like hearing this, but if you go to your smartphone and you look at the screen time function, you'll be
Mhm.
surprised how much time you spend every 24 hours on just that one screen, our
Right.
mobiles. And I'm like, just reclaim 30 minutes of that. If you can reclaim that, believe me, you're going to be in a much better place 28 days from now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2% of the day is not much. I mean, a half hour,
No,
that's a TV program for most people watching, if you
that's
sit down
right.
in front of the television. Yeah, so when I
Yeah.
did reach out to you, you mentioned that you were gonna go hiking on this,
Yeah.
off the grid trip. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I had a couple different hikes. I had the Juan de Fuca Trail, which is on the western coast of Vancouver Island. So I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, and west of the Lower Mainland, where I'm situated on the mainland, there's a big island called Vancouver Island. And on Vancouver Island, there's a lot of green space and a lot
Mm,
of trails. And so there's two trails in particular. I did one called the Juan de Fuca Trail, beautiful trail along the west coast. It's more public, so you don't need to have permits or passes to get on it, and it's all government camping along the way. That was preparation for the big one, which is probably the one that you're asking about, because then I was really off grid, and it's called the West Coast Trail. And if people
mhm.
Google that, it's all over the map, literally and figuratively, from the standpoint people travel from all around the world every year to do this trail. It's beautiful. It's over 100 years old, but you need a permit to get on it. They only allow so many people a year to go on it. So it's one of those things. It's like as soon as they open up the season, it's like, oh man, can I get a permit? Right? Can I get on this? And fortunately for my friend and I, we got it, and we took 6 days to hike it. It's about 80 kilometers, and it is some of the most beautiful, breathtaking scenery you can hope to see in Canada, and
Yeah.
but very secluded.
Mhm.
you know,
Doesn't that make you feel
definitely off
like
the
more
track.
connected to the earth and to the universe when you're out in nature so much more as you spoke earlier about using your phone? Like how much time do we are we in front of our smartphones? But like being outside and being, fresh air, being in nature, seeing the greenness, seeing whatever, it could be a jungle, it
Mhm.
could be a forest, even when it's snowing, going outside in the snow and there's no leaves on the ground, and on the trees and it's like this is still beautiful, So not
For
I
sure.
think Bob Marley had that song Concrete Jungle, so everyone was living in the jungle and people still are, because all the jobs are there. So you kind of well, most jobs, I should say, right? So people are geared towards to get make earn a living, right? So it is a struggle to earn a living these days. And tell me, like, what do you recommend to people that you speak to
Mhm.
and with about dealing with the juggle of that struggle?
Yeah, I think a lot of us are used to this sort of general or normal. Let's just say it's normalized, like this term. We hear people often refer to work-life balance, and I think it's a wonderful sort of idea, about having balance between our work and then our life outside of work. But the thing is, with balance, when you really pay attention to how it happens, you're changing your focus to different areas. And you're trying to split your time in a way that allows you to keep this somewhat of a balance. But if you think about it, like on a teeter totter, you shift the weight to one end, what happens to the other end? It goes up. Now you shift back to the end that's up. Oh, look, it goes down and the other end goes up. And it's this constant sort of teeter totter effect where we're struggling to keep this equilibrium and what we believe to be equilibrium. So my invitation to people is think about it a little bit differently. Think about how you want to harmonize the energy between work and life. Because this idea of harmony means it's not like one is more than the other. It's a matter of just trying to create this way that they both complement each other. Because the common bond in that is the individual we're referring to. Like if I'm working and I got stuff I do outside of work, well, I'm the common connector, the common denominator. So why not look for a way to do both, but create this great sense of fulfillment? And the only way we can do that is we just have to sit down and get really clear on what we're committing ourselves to. Don't think about time management, think about commitment management. How do we commit to use our time every day? And most people, and I'm one of these people, I know I've dealt with this many times in the past, we tend to overcommit. So when we overcommit, then we feel like, oh my goodness, my energy's being robbed, as well as
Mhm.
my time's being robbed. We might start to feel a little bit of resentment to some of the things that we're doing. And it's just because we've got too much happening all at once. And so learning to block our time and manage time so we prioritize little daily deposits into the things that
Percent,
matter
let's say.
most. Yeah, and that's where all the good stuff happens, right? It's like when you really start to say, okay, family's important to me, so I've got make sure today I've got some time committed for family. Oh, my fitness is really important because I know I feel better and I show up a better version when I get my workouts in. So I got my workouts also blocked in. And obviously work, it's also blocked in. But I'm making time to harmonize all the things that are important. And then whatever time I got left over that can go to the other stuff if I want, right? So hopefully that gives just a little different perspective on that. But yeah, that struggle with the juggle is real, man. We're all dealing with it, right?
Yeah, we're all doing it because we're all living this life experience, and I mean, I find I try, I write a schedule. Sometimes I stick to it. Sometimes I don't. I go in streaks. Sometimes,
Hmm,
my
hmm.
one constant is when I do roll out of bed and I stretch my back real fast. I bang out 41 push-ups
Nice.
because I'm 40 years old. So I do one
Ah,
more push-up than my age. Every
nice.
single one. I can't do it. If I don't do it, I feel weird. Like I can't remember the last time I did not do those push-ups. Right. So I was doing 40 last year, a few months
Yeah,
ago. Like roll out of bed, bam, get the blood flowing, and
yeah,
when you said 2%. So I try if I'm gonna exercise with some 25-pound weights. It's only like for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes
sure. It's
tops.
great.
Just
Yeah.
just to stay in shape, just to keep some level of I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to standards too. Like
Mm,
I
mm,
was an athlete back in my younger years, playing football, baseball, basketball, and when I wanted
hmm,
to play football, I lifted more weights to get bigger for that. But then afterwards, when
mm,
life and kind of takes control, 20 years later, obviously I don't want to be a football player anymore, but I still want to be
hmm,
able to, like you said, you bring your best version of yourself when you put your time in for your workout. And I feel the same way. If I wake up and I'm able
mm.
to go for a run or do a quick 15-minute workout with weights, my whole day's it's like a 95, 99% chance it's gonna be a great day. Like I don't
Yeah.
remember the last day where I have had a workout in the morning, did a little meditation. I did not have a great day. But
Yeah.
I don't do that every single day, so, like, my consistency, yeah, it should be better. I mean, I'm sure everyone's can be better, like, trying to find
Mm.
that consistency and giving that 2% every single day, carving that time. Life is, it is a juggle.
It is. It is. But it's a matter of just learning how to harmonize that energy to a place where you can still prioritize all the things that you say are important. and
Yeah.
that's different for everybody, right? And that's
Right.
really we're getting clear on what do we value, what's really truly important at the end of the day. And I mean, it almost sounds like a cliche. We hear that being referenced quite often, but if we actually taking the time to sit down and say, you know what, this is what is a priority to me. This is what I want to prioritize for my family. And
Mhm.
then, yeah, putting a plan in place to actually try to see that through, right? Those are all it takes energy to do that stuff. And
Mhm.
I find a lot of times we have the idea that we want to do it, but we don't create the space to actually take the action or time to do it. And so that's what I always invite people to do. Like just creates a little bit of space so you can start to think about these questions. One of my favorite things is I just go outside for a walk. I'll have one or two questions in mind that I want to ponder or think on. And I just make that my focus while I'm out doing a walk or I'm out for a bike ride, right? Like I just that will be what I'm thinking. And usually when I come back from that, because it's an amazing thing when you work out and you're thinking, this is why, listening to an audiobook, listening to a podcast, while you're exercising is actually incredible because your brain retains more of the information and it tends to get a little bit more creative as well. It's that uptake of blood flow and oxygen. So
Mhm.
use it to your benefit, like, so this
Right.
way you're checking off a few things all at once, right? It's not like I'm only doing one thing, I'm doing a number of things, but all with one activity and everybody wins. So,
Right. So
uh,
yeah, back
and
in
that's
the
just a
day, I
matter.
was popping Rocky and Rage Against the Machine. Now, I'm putting on motivational, YouTube videos and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, but it's very important, and creating that example, um, especially if you have children. Can you speak to that? Like
Mhm.
how important it is to show them to obviously if you are in shape, if you're taking care of yourself, and you're more than likely eating healthy or somewhat healthy, so
Right.
that those kind of things are going to be around. So your children are more likely to enjoy those same types of food.
Yeah, I think you're nailing the nail on the head there, Nicholas. Like from the standpoint that if we think about how we all learn, and this is well documented, the science has done lots of studies to sort of validate this. And if you really think about your own life, right? And for those listening and watching this, think about your own life with this in mind. Think about anything that you've learned. You've probably learned it through one of two, if not both, methods, and it's going to be modeling and mentorship. Modeling meaning maybe someone showed you, maybe you watched a video, maybe you took a course, but it modeled how to do something. And then you yourself then try to model that same behavior or actions to then produce similar results for yourself. So it's this modeled behavior, role modeling. And then on the flip side, we also have mentorship. And this is where there's usually someone that maybe already has a bit of experience in the area that we want to see growth in or change or improvement. And so we rely on these people to support us and help us and guide us to at least follow a similar path that they themselves have followed in hopes that we can create similar results like they've created. And these two things are very present not only in our professional lives, but especially in our personal lives, and very much present if you're a parent. Okay? Because when you're a parent, you got a couple little eyes that are always watching what you're doing. Whether you are realizing it or not, there are little sponges soaking it all up. And so, whatever habits you're modeling and saying it's okay to do, believe me, the kids pick up on that and they will emulate. That's how they learn. They copy what mom and dad are doing, or what their grandparents are doing, the main caretaker is doing. And so, taking that to mind and to heart, you can start to have more intentionality around how you're showing up for your kids. The kind of foods that we eat. Like, when our kids were younger, they're 18 and 20 now. I've got two daughters and they're very independent and, they're off to the university now. And so we're in a different season of life, but when they were younger, I remember speaking to parents and they would tell me, yeah, well, our young son, Sam, he only eats this stuff. Oh, and then our daughter, yeah, she only eats this. And then for, my husband, he likes to eat this. And then I eat that. And I'm like, so what, you're doing 4 dinners every night? Oh, yeah, yeah. So everybody gets something. And I'm like, why don't they just eat what you eat? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, I don't even give my kids an option. We make dinner. It's family dinner. we're all eating this dinner. And if you don't like it and you don't want to eat it, that's fine. That's on you, but there's nothing else. Like,
Right.
it was like, there's no options here. And we also had a rule you always try something at least once, and inevitably with the kids, they try something and be like, oh, I actually kind of like that. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
So our kids have a wonderful palate. They like all sorts of types of foods and veggies and lots of different ethnicity, like ethnic foods. And it's because we always were introducing that. And if we were eating it, they were eating it too. But we've modeled really healthy habits by doing that. So for them, that's their normal. That's just their
Right.
normal. They don't think about it. They build a dinner now. They usually have some sort of starch. It might be yams, maybe some rice or some quinoa. They're going to have some sort of vegetable as well. And they're also going to have some sort of protein. And that's how we build our plates. And they do this. I've watched them make their own dinners now when they come to visit, right? And it's awesome. And they
Abs-
learn that by modeling what mom and dad were doing. And that's just one example, right? There's lots of examples where you have opportunity to make that positive impact on your kids or those that are you're closest to, like your own community, right? Like this goes well beyond just the family unit. It goes well beyond. And
yeah.
uh and that's
Absolutely.
why I always encourage people be very accountable to yourself, but also to those that are watching.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this, as you know, the obesity rates
Hmm.
are very high. The
Yeah.
people that are on psychotropic drugs are very high. Like
Hmm.
just everything.
Yeah.
It
Right.
seems like the population in a sense, and well, I can't speak for the whole world, but at least from American perspective, that it has degenerated, and quite significantly,
Mm,
quite quickly as well, and that's
mm.
what happens, as you know, with America, right? Everything happens here, or you say, or England, and then it kind of spreads out across the rest of the world. So like, I do travel. I have traveled. There are obesity problems in other countries as well.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
how how do we fight that? Where do we start to educate? I mean, obviously you can say school. You hit it
Yep.
before. At home, like it doesn't seem like the government's ever trying to help or promote that, right?
Yeah, and to be fair, I think if we're always going to rely on the government to do it for us,
Right,
it
I agree with
is,
that.
or we're waiting around for them to, just do what we're asking. We might be waiting a while. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of stuff going on around the world right now, and so when it comes to the education of our kids, as an example, we realize that there is a system. There's a system that we're going to plug them into. It is far from perfect. But where we can support and where we can add to that is what we do on the home front, but more importantly, what we just do in our life every day.
Mhm.
That's the real valuable lessons that our kids are imparted with just by being around mom and dad, being a part of our life. Like even when our kids were young, we used to take them to everything with us. We were the annoying parents that always brought the kids along. Like, and we just did. Like I would go to Toastmasters meetings and I would bring my kids. We founded a couple Toastmasters clubs, which is a for people that aren't familiar, Toastmasters are a nonprofit organization. It's all over the world. They're these little clubs where they help people be more effective public speakers as well as leaders. And it's nonprofit, so it basically is free. It almost is free. I don't think I spend more than a couple $100 a year for all my membership fees, but it's just a wonderful curriculum. However, it's typically for people that are 18 and over, and I'm like, well, no, I want to get my kids around this, or at least see mom and dad doing this stuff because it would be good for them just to get around that kind of energy. So they used to come, they'd hang out in the back of the room and they'd watch mom and dad speak and talk and interact with people. And inevitably, sometimes they would come up and speak to the group. Here's these kids talking in front of a
Sweet.
group of strangers, adults, and engaging them. I mean, I could never do that as a kid. There's no way. I dealt with social anxiety. I was very introverted. Like I did not feel comfortable speaking to more than one person at a time. And yet here's my kids doing the complete opposite, and I know it has a lot to do with what they've seen mom and dad do and how we've instilled this confidence in them you know
Right, confidence is
um
huge. Confidence is huge because
it
people do
is.
have, especially children too, at a certain age, self-esteem issues, or whether
Correct.
that comes
That's
from
right.
social media or from school,
Yeah.
or, you know, um, obviously not. I'm not a big fan of, the participation trophy where everyone gets a trophy for just,
Yeah,
being
right.
there or playing a sport, that's not
Yeah,
that's not good at all. But encouragement and instilling that confidence is very important, because if
correct.
someone has that confidence at a younger age, they're going to be more apt to actually stick up for themselves when they know they're not being
Yeah,
spoken to correctly. They have a sense of worth of, this is who I am, and I'm going to treat you properly, obviously, but I'm not going to be taking any kind of crap from anyone, because you know what? Who are you? Like, in essence, right? Who are
mhm,
you to tell me how I should feel, or try to put me down for no reason, things like that.
that's
Um,
right.
so instilling that to the children, giving them an opportunity, um, to be active. Action is
Yeah,
is huge, and being active is a great thing. If I'm always moving, I mean, I work in a restaurant business when I'm here in America.
mhm,
I own a hostel in Panama, so I'm always doing something. If
yeah.
wherever I am, like, I can't sit still. I'm sitting still now, having a conversation with you. Or when I'm in Panama at my hostel, like, I have hammocks everywhere, but
Mhm.
you won't find me in them. Like, I mean, obviously, I have kids there, and business
Yeah,
to run, and the vegetation's always growing. It's like there's not much time. There's not, and I value my time. I truly
mhm.
do, and I was like, it's not enough. There's sometimes it's just not enough.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. But you know what? That's just a sign of living a very full life, right? And if
That
you're
is
filling
true.
it with the stuff that you want to fill it with, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with that. It's
I
when we find
agree.
ourselves relying on the badge of, "Hey, I'm so busy," that often
Mm,
implies that we're filling our days with things that maybe we don't want to be filling it with. So language is a big deal. Like, I'm a big fan of language and how we talk to ourselves or how we communicate. And I'll tell you, that idea of being busy, it's been glorified, right? Like, you think about
mm,
the Gary Vaynerchuk's of the world, the hustle culture, right?
yeah,
And I mean, I know he's shifted gears now. He's speaking a little bit differently, but this it was praised. It was praised for a lot of years. People were talking about hustle, hustle, hustle. Like, do the 9 to 5 and then come home and work the 6 to 2. Like, and I get it. I
yeah.
get it. I've
Oh,
been there and I have done that.
mhm.
But we have to ask ourselves, what's the motivation for that? Like, what are we working towards? And sometimes that's not clear. And I encourage people, get clear on the why. We hear about this a lot.
Yeah. Find your why. Find
Simon
your why.
Sinek's Start with Why, right? Like, his book is great. It's TED Talk. And yeah, you're right. Finding that why is very powerful because it's an emotional connection to the motivations of why we do what we do. And a lot of times we can't emotionally communicate why we're doing what we're doing. Like, when people are asked why questions, you can tell that sometimes it will stump them. But you ask them a how or a what question, no problem, because it's a different part of the brain that's responsible with creating that answer. The why uses a very specific part of our brain that is where emotions are held. And that's why it's not so easy to sometimes articulate. But it doesn't mean we want to avoid it. It means we might want to create some space or do some exercises to get that very clear for ourselves, because clarity breeds confidence. And when we're feeling confident, we take more action and we procrastinate less.
Truth, truth. So let me ask you, why and
Mhm.
how? Why
Yeah,
are
yeah,
you
yeah,
in
yeah.
this sector, right? Why do you find yourself
Sure.
being in this position in your life, trying to help others, being, you know, what your inspiration is about these days?
Well, for me, it's a big fulfillment piece as well. And I learned that early on in life, which I'm very grateful for, but it didn't come to it easily. And what I mean is, I'll sort of give you a little bit of backstory here. At age 9, my parents, and I'm totally dating myself. I'm 46 now. So if we go way back, I'm going back to like 1985. All right. And we're not
Oh,
talking
yeah.
back to the future here. Okay. Like, this is like 1985. And I'm 9 years old. My brother's 7. And I remember coming home after school one day and my dad was home. And so was my mom. And we're like, whoa, that's kind of weird. They both normally are still working, and this is kind of odd. Anyways, they usher my brother and I in, sit us down in the living room, and next thing out of their mouth is, we're getting divorced. And this is mid 80s. Back in the mid 80s,
Yeah,
statistically speaking, there was a lot of stigmas around divorce, a lot of stigmatization. So it wasn't often talked about. And if it was always hush, hush, hush. It was kind of taboo. Statistically, more relationships were still together back then, where now it's completely different. Now we have the statistics
Flips.
supporting that more relationships end in divorce than actually succeed in marriage, right? Like it's startling, the data. That's a completely different conversation, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we could be unpacking that all day, Nicholas. But you know, ultimately, back then at age 9, that rocked my world. It rocked it because I didn't see that coming, nor did my brother, and it just sort of came out of the blue, and emotionally, it was really hard. Also psychologically speaking, I'm 9 years old for Pete's sake. Like I couldn't do anything, and I didn't know how to process all those things I was feeling, but yet there wasn't any support for that either. And so what ended up
Mhm.
happening was I learned very quickly that I can influence my emotional state by doing certain things. Those things included eating certain foods, and these foods were very rich in calories, but very poor in nutrition. Okay, like I wasn't like I was sitting around. Nicholas, can you pass me some more salad, please? That was that was not the deal. I was eating foods that gave me an instant high, an emotional response. Very foods that would be classified as not the healthiest options, but we know what happens. You eat sugar, you feel better instantly, right? And then obviously there's the repercussions that happen after we hear about the sugar crash. And so what do? Especially as a kid, I want to eat more of it. Also, I played video games and I watched movies, which again are little dopamine hits, right? Constantly. So that was my way of escaping my life and making myself feel better in those moments. And I did that as my normal for almost 6 years. And so in those 6 years, my weight just kept packing on the lbs, kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and to the point that at 15 years old, at the doctor with my mom, and the doctor's like, "Hey, Betty Ann, my mom, Guy is morbidly obese. His BMI is in the 40s. Like, this is an issue." And I was dealing with a lot of mental health challenges. I dealt with asthma, inflamed joints, a lot of pain, discomfort. And on top of that, I had such a low self opinion, and I avoided big social settings. I avoided mirrors because I didn't want to look at myself. There's very few images of me back then because if there was a camera in the room, I was not in the room because I was constantly fearing that I was being judged by everybody and anyone. And it was a really hard time. It was a hard time in life. And at age 15, I just had this moment where I was like, I want to get healthy. I broke down sobbing in the bathroom. I got out of the shower. I forgot to stay in the shower longer so the mirror would be covered in condensation. And for some reason, I decided to look at my reflection that day, and I just felt this, oh, like disconnected. Like, this person I'm looking at in the mirror, this isn't me. This is not who I want to be. And in fact, if I don't make some changes now, I'm afraid of who I might be in 5 years from now when I'm 20. And I was more afraid of that future than I was of the idea of trying to figure out a way to get healthy. So it's important to take note, for anybody, and I think people will relate to this. When you're more afraid of the idea of not changing, you're usually ready to make some changes, right? And that's where I was, and so I made some instant changes. I had to educate myself on the hows to get healthy. I started moving my body a little bit every day with purpose. I did that through mountain biking, and I started educating myself on nutrition. And so it took me 5.5, almost 6 years to put all the weight on. And when I made that flip of switch, started doing things a little bit differently, it took me 20 months to release all that weight. So important to also note, change can happen pretty quick when we actually make the decision to go all in with the change. And those are lessons I learned by the age of 17. So they've served me very, very well in life because I've repeated that process many times through some hard stuff, which we may get into, we may not. But regardless, at 17, I remember very distinctly, and this is the answer to your question. I know it's a very long winded answer, but I got to this place where friends of my mom came to visit us at the house, and they were waiting by the porch door, looking in through the screen as I'm making dinner or something in the kitchen. And they're like, "Hey, is your mom around?" I'm like, "Yeah, she's out back gardening. Just keep going in the backyard. You'll find her." And they just stood there for a second, right? There was a bit of a pause. They weren't leaving. They kept looking at me, and I'm like, "Okay, what's going on? Like, anything else?" And they're like, "Well, actually, before we see your mom, can we ask you a question?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So they came in the screen door. They sat down at the kitchen table. I went and sat down with them, and next thing you know, out of their mouths, they were acknowledging, "Die, we're so impressed with all the changes you've made in the last couple of years. You're so different. You're healthy. You're vibrant. It's like, wow. Do you think you could help us getting a little healthier? Here's people more than twice my age, friends of my mom's, they were adults. And here they were coming to me, a 17-year-old boy, and asking if I could help them make some health changes. This is the first time in my life I felt I had something of value to offer somebody else. And it was something that when I started helping them, it made me feel so fulfilled. I was like, holy smokes, I don't care what I do for the rest of my life. This is going to be a part of it, you know? And so ever since then, since I was 17 to today, almost 30 years, I've been supporting people with change. And a lot of those are health or wellness changes, sometimes financial changes, because I do a lot of business coaching and consulting. But regardless, I'm helping people navigate change. And that's just it, man. That's how it all began, was with that one little thing, those people saying to
Amazing.
me, can you help us? And me saying, yeah, I can. And I'm excited to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. Kudos to you. I mean, we all have to change. You can't fight it, right? I mean, doesn't matter where you are, how old you are. Things are changing. Your body's
Mm,
changing, physically, mentally, spiritually along the way. Like
yeah.
it's part of life. That is the life experience. And to help someone along the way, that has to be
Mhm.
very fulfilling. When I first started building Soursop Hostel, I was trying to you know raise some money, so I started a
Mm.
GoFundMe account, and
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
ended up raising like 1,500 bucks or something like that, But some
Nice.
random person living in Europe, um, somewhere in Eastern Europe, I don't recall the country. He ends up sending me like 30 bucks, $30, I'm like 30 euros, and I'm like, wow, this person doesn't even know me, but he wants to help,
Yeah.
So I'm like, the first 25 people that donated to the cause of building the hostel, I ended up creating these T-shirts and mailing them out to everyone because I felt embarrassed asking for money to build
Mm,
this, and
mm.
and I wanted them to be a part of it. And I also offered anyone whoever donated a lifetime pass to the Soursop
Huh,
Hostel,
that's
and
great.
so I sent out the shirt to Europe, and he received it. And he sent me a message. He's like, "Wow, you're a man of your word." He's like, "You helped save my life." And I'm thinking like,
What?
how
Wow.
did I help save your life? Like, I never asked, but like
Mhm,
all
mhm.
this advertising promotions I do for the Sour Apostle on Facebook, Instagram, occasionally I see him liking things. And like this guy, this is going on 7 years now. He's never visited. I hope he does, but
Incredible.
just little things like that. Like you said earlier, right? With your kids are always watching. Sometimes you
Yeah,
never know who's watching. So
that's right.
if when you're at work and you're doing the things the right way, taking pride in what you do, people are watching that, and if you can lead by
Yes.
example, because I'm from the mode of leading by example. I mean, I can
Yeah.
definitely, I'll follow someone if they're going the right way, but at the same time, like I feel like, what you are capable of, and you can bring along people with you, um, to
Well said.
reach that goal, the common goal, right? There's always a common goal. There's personal goals, there's common goals. Depends on what your work environment is, and it makes it so much easier. It makes it so much easier just
Mm,
to not go against someone who might have different. They might have a different idea in mind what they're looking for. So
yeah.
putting your head down, running, you know, being too busy, you said it earlier, right? Where's life, at that sense? One of my great mentors, great guy, um, definitely one of the most influential persons in my life. He owned a restaurant, and I worked for him for many years. And it was maybe a few years before he passed, and I asked him if he'd do it all over again, would he do it? He left a great job, well-paying job to fulfill his dream, and he said, I wouldn't, because
Wow.
I miss so much time with my kids, and you can never get that back. So as much as being successful is, and obviously we have to earn a living, you can't get around the fact, but take that time to spend it with you, especially if you're a parent. with your kids or your friends and family and loved ones because you know what? As much as that dream might be, or all that
Mm,
money might mean to you, in the end, you can't take you can't take money with you, right? You can't take
that's right.
that's not going in the back of the hearse, right? So the moments in life are very important to capture,
True. Well said. Well said, Nicholas.
you know. So what do you got on your on the horizon for the rest of this 2023?
Well, it's there's a few things. I mean, obviously, it's getting my youngest daughter set up for success. We're helping her transition to university, so she just graduated this past, I guess, past June, and so high school's done, but now she's moving on to university, and so getting her set up with that is a priority for the rest of the summer. And then this fall, I got a few cool projects working on. There's a couple potential. Couple startups I'm a part of. One in particular I'm really excited about, and it helps people with change, but around behaviors, and it's really quite cool. And then outside of that, I've got a new website launching and a new community site launching as well. So those are pieces that I'm really excited about because just another way that I can continue to support people, and bring people together. So that's the real big stuff on the professional side. And then personally, I've got some CrossFit competitions coming up in the fall, so that would be fun. And I was originally going to be doing some Spartans. I had the Spartan trifecta booked for end of month, but unfortunately, all the fires up here in Canada, they've had to cancel the event. And so that's something I'm pushing off till the fall. I might go somewhere stateside to either Portland or maybe Seattle to do some runs in the fall. But outside of that, man, I just want to end the year really well so I can set myself up for a great 2024.
Right, right. Finishing the year strong is very important, and obviously
Yeah.
everyone writes down their New Year's resolutions, and some people it might last a few days or not. But me and my wife, we always write down our goals for the following year, and from
Awesome.
the year prior, we go back and we read all our goals together on New Year's Eve, and all right, checked off. We accomplished this one. We didn't. Oh, we did. So like we're trying to get to like this year we want to hit 80% of our 20 goals that
Yeah.
we 20
Yeah.
25 whatever it was and then we looked up the information, we googled information like how often do people reach their goals, and
Mm.
it was like around 33%, give or take 30 something
Yeah.
percent. And then when we counted our percentage on that previous year, we reached like roughly the same percentage, 30
Ah!
something percent of our goals were accomplished. Like Jesus
Uh,
Christ, why can't we be a little better than average here? But like at least if you are writing down your goals, you're more apt to actually go out and
that's
work
right.
towards them.
Yeah.
So um we have a wall um, at the hostel where it's painted behind it is what is your goal? What
Oh,
what is
cool.
your goal? I stole from a Jack Canfield book. Is
Yeah.
write down 101 goals. It could be small, it could be trivial. Just write it down and just accomplish it. So I took that idea. I'm like, you know what? I didn't write down 101 goals after I read that book. I wrote down like roughly 20, but I wanted to take that idea and put it on the wall at the hostel so when the guests would show up, they would want to paint their goal and maybe they'd be more apt to go out into the real world and accomplish those things. So
Yeah.
we all different languages. Maybe we I don't even know how many. The whole wall's filled. It's starting to go into the kitchen now, but like it's
Wow.
if you want something bad enough in life, if you
Yeah.
are truly committed to that in life, there is literally nothing that can stop you except yourself. So I'm a big advocate of
Mhm.
you know if you're not do what you're passionate about, and if you're making
Mhm.
money doing that, then it's not even work, it's not even a job most of the time, right? Because you're passionate, you
Yeah.
love it, and sometimes you have to put food on the table. So maybe you're in that job, and you kind of feel kind of stuck, and you're just doing this to pay bills, and that's not the life that you probably wanted, and
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
happening all over the world. So if you can, if you're out there, if you're listening,
Mhm.
if you can find what you're passionate about or just live the life true to yourself and your values, and
Mm.
tomorrow's not guaranteed. Tomorrow is far from guaranteed, so enjoy it at the same time, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. living life to the fullest is one of the best things you can do,
Well
and
said.
I want to thank you for trying to help people,
Thank
work
you.
towards that, work through their change. Being a life coach, what describe being a life coach for me?
Well, with 30 years of coaching under my belt, and also just I've done a lot of other things professionally speaking, to really just gain a lot of knowledge, and I'd go as far as say wisdom, because it's knowledge and application, right? Or knowledge and action is typically wisdom to some level, and I bring a lot of that to how I support people, how I work with people. And but because of my fitness and nutrition, very extensive background in both of those, and then also as a neuro change practitioner, uh, the mind, the body, the energy, you can call it spirit, whatever you want. um, it's all about trying to create the harmony for all of those things to work in unison, because when you get things firing, it's like, if you have a car and has six pistons, right, but only four of them are working. Well, it's not going to be operating it optimally. There's going to be some lag. There's going to be some tough spots, some stickiness. There's going to be some resistance. And this is very true in our lives as well. So, as a life coach or a life mentor, it really is about helping people not only identify the path that they most feel drawn to walk or travel or journey, but also identifying the possible things that are going to happen along the way that might hold them up, trip them up, or cause them to maybe even want to quit, because that happens. It happens all the time. Um, and I'd go as far as to say it's a normal thing, right? The idea of failing is normal. Like
That's how you
we've
learn.
had a lot of failures in our lives, right? But how do we navigate failure? How do we interpret what's our relationship with that? And this often leans into that idea of growth versus fixed mindsets, and those are definitely conversations that come up, but it's really specific. I like to help people with their fitness and nutrition. You get that dialed in first, or at least in a better place than where it's at. You start to feel better right away, like literally within weeks you feel completely different, which creates the space for you to have the positive energy to lean in and start doing some of that inner work, some of the mindset work. But I find if your body's not in a good place, it's going to win out over the mind every day. If your
Yeah.
body hurts, it feels painful. You wake up in the morning, you feel like you didn't sleep. Like all the mindset stuff that people talk about working on, if you don't have the physical health and well being in place, the mental well being is going to be really hard to attain, especially keep. So that's why I always sort of start from that place of fitness and nutrition first, and then we layer the other stuff on after. But that's life coaching, man. It's just it's sort of my approach to it. But again, as I said, I've got a very diverse background, so I can help people with a number of different things.
Awesome, awesome. Well, please
Yeah,
tell the
it's fun.
audience where they can find you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn. I find LinkedIn is great because I work with a lot of professionals, CEOs, people that are performing very high in their professional life, but maybe don't feel that they're performing as well in their personal life. And so I find that I'm always able to have those conversations on LinkedIn, and then vice versa. If you're someone that's on social and you like reading motivational, educational, and inspirational type of content, we should definitely connect, because that's typically my focus, is to provide those when every time I put a piece of content out. And it's also a great place for us to have a conversation and say, hey, uh, and start the talk. So those two platforms, if you can spell my name, you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Really appreciate it, my man.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Dude.
And if you would like to support the podcast, please visit Amazon.com and search Conquering Hill 50 writing prompts for a dream chaser. And also visit Etsy.com and search Conquering Hill for all our gear. Thank you so much.